Now, there were several interesting stories while I was gone. One that caught my eye was the announcement 2 weeks ago by Democratic State Representative Hillary Cassell of Broward that she would be switching parties and becoming a Republican. In a statement she released, she noted, "As a proud Jewish woman, I have been increasingly troubled by the Democratic Party's failure to unequivocally support Israel and its willingness to tolerate extreme progressive voices that justify or condone acts of terrorism." I wanted to ask Cassell about this, but she has not responded to repeated calls and texts. Several of her Democratic colleagues say they've also tried to speak to her, but she's been hiding from them. Now, I certainly hope she's not in hiding. If her decision was truly a principled one and not just an act of political opportunism, she should be willing to come on here and explain it to voters. Otherwise, it's going to look cowardly. So I'm hopeful she will be on the show next week. This week, I spoke to State Representative Michael Gottlieb, who is also a Democrat and head of the Jewish caucus. I started by asking for his reaction to Cassell's party switch.
My reaction was shocked, surprised. Representative Cassell and I are fairly friendly. In fact, we traveled to Israel together this summer with a larger congregation of legislators. And so, I got to know her fairly well. So I was really surprised to see that she was leaving the Democratic Party and doing so sort of without notice to any of her colleagues. Certainly I didn't know. And at the same point in time, I think in terms of a legal mind, it was a loss. She is a very well-respected lawyer and property insurance litigator, somebody who most people in the legislature look to as an expert. So I think it was a loss and a blow to our party. If you're asking me, why she left, I would have to say I don't know. I know that Representative Cassell had recently been given the position of deputy policy chief in the Democratic Party, and she was certainly looked at as somebody that we were going to have leading the way on property insurance reform for us. I saw her stated reasons, and as a Jew, as a Democrat, I don't believe that the Democratic Party does not support Israel or Jews. I think
let me hold you there, because let me read what her statement was, because she has not been doing interviews. We've tried several times to reach her, and she's not made herself available. But she wrote in a statement at the time of her switch, "As a proud Jewish woman, I have been increasingly troubled by the Democratic Party's failure to unequivocally support Israel and its willingness to tolerate extreme progressive voices that justify or condone acts of terrorism." Your reaction to that?
Let's start with the second part there. In terms of tolerating acts of prejudice, Trump had Fuentes and somebody else at Mar-a-Lago. I can't recall. Kanye West at Mar-a-Lago, without telling them or getting rid of them. So that in and of itself is an act of anti-Semitism, in my opinion. When you coddle these people who say and believe anti-Semitic things. So I think you could argue the same for the Republican Party as that statement argues for the Democratic Party. Are there fringes in both parties that are that stick to anti-Semitic tropes that again, I'll use the word coddle people who are known anti-Semitic? Yeah, of course there are. Is that representative of each party as a whole? Absolutely not.
But it has become this narrative that Republicans have used, and I think Donald Trump effectively used, to try to get more support from Jewish voters. I mean, he's explicitly said he doesn't understand any Democrat who, any Jewish person would vote for a Democrat. It's almost as if they're betraying Israel by doing that. And he's used that line effectively. And I go back to an incident that occurred in the legislature just in November of 2023, November 7th. It was 30 days after the October 7th Hamas raid, the brutal terrorist attack on on Israel, and the legislature came into a special session called for by the governor to enact a different piece of legislation that you just talked about anti-Semitism legislation. And Representative Nixon, a Democrat from Jacksonville, offered a ceasefire resolution wanting to end hostilities on both sides that was greeted with a lot of hostility from both Democrats and Republicans. And I don't want to get too into the weeds on what Representative Nixon proposed. There were certainly some flaws to it and problems with it. But, you know, Representative Cassell was one of the ones who stood up along with yourself to denounce what Representative Nixon was proposing in terms of a ceasefire back in 2023. Do you think that's where this started, her view that Democrats are anti-Semitic and support fringe voices?
So I think the Republican Party has done a much better job than Democrats at creating identity politics. And I think that when you package it like that, that's exactly what this was identity politics. Republicans are more supportive of Israel than Democrats are. And I don't believe that to be true. I think the Biden administration has done an exceptional job providing Israel with the munitions and money that they have needed to wage the war against terror that they have done, and that Netanyahu has done very successfully, so much to the point where many people have called him a warmonger because he is meting out terror every place that he can to make Israel and Jews throughout the diaspora safer. With that being said, when Angie Nixon filed her ceasefire piece of legislation, there was a quiet uproar before it hit the House floor, with many on both sides of the fence telling her, you shouldn't be filing this. It's too soon. It's too raw. And I do think that the debate before, during on the House floor, and then some of the uproar after is certainly what led to Representative Cassell's departure from the Democratic Party.
Well, here's my thought with regard to that. That incident, that legislation was in November of 2023. And by the way, I'll note that it failed on Angie Nixon's resolution failed on a vote of 104 to 2, with only Angie Nixon and Anna Eskamani, a Democrat from Orlando, voting in support of it. Every other Democrat, as well as all Republicans, voted against it. So it's not as if she had support even within the Black Caucus for that legislation. But if the genesis of her party switch goes back that far, and she's been troubled ever since, I'm trying to reconcile why she didn't make the party switch and run as a Republican for re-election. Why did she wait to win a Democratic safe seat and then switch parties? Does that trouble you at all?
I think that's what troubles many people. And if you saw at the delegation meeting that was brought up the other day by a constituent, yeah, certainly as a Democrat, it troubles me in that, we wanted our numbers to grow. And, here we are, we had a safe seat. We had somebody who won. We had somebody who has said that they embrace Democratic values and has denounced it at many times some of the Republican positions and values, and then switched. And I agree with you, if that was the genesis, why did it take so long to come out? And I think, as many people are saying, it's a matter of, opportunity. Rep. Cassell is vice chair now of the Insurance and Banking Committee. But I can't tell you or speak for her as to why she made the change then. I can only tell you, and I haven't spoken to Rep. Cassell myself, I can only tell you what it appears to look like from my perspective and from what other people are imparting to me, the information that I'm getting, both from constituents and other legislators.
I mean, this is the second party switch we've seen since the election in terms of two Democrats now switching over to the Republican side. We may see more. The notion that since Florida is now a red state, if you're a politician with any sort of ambition, with any sort of desire to run for the next level of office, you almost need to be a Republican. Is it, as a Democrat, is this a daunting time for you? And what do you think this next legislative session is going to be like?
I've been in the minority ever since I came into office in 2018. I've been in the minority as a criminal defense attorney for 32 years. I kind of enjoy the uphill battle. So is it daunting to me? No. You know, we're still going to have our wins. But we're here as Democrats to be the voice of the people. And we are going to continue to be the voice of the people. I have seen for 6 years a Republican Party coddle the insurance industry. I have seen a Republican Party make decisions that don't benefit our constituents. And so, you know, no, I don't find it daunting.